Straight into the wall, gets another bite! Oh, goodness me! Alexis Sanchez, unstoppable!
Robin is there! Iron Robin! Has surely won it for Bayern Munich! It's Ibrahimovic! 1-0 PSG! And here he is again. Here he is again. That's astonishing! It's absolutely world class!
Hello and welcome to the Football Hipsters podcast. It's the Satchel. We're back again. I am your host Kris, as I always am, and a little bit of a change in the old Satchel lineup this evening. Mr. Welsh, John, is unavailable this evening, so I have called upon our reserves. Sounds harsh, actually. No, I've called upon a co-panelist. That sounds much better. I've got Drew with me. Good evening, Drew.
Good evening, and I'll try to do John a little bit of justice this evening. So.
I'm sure you will do a fantastic job, but John will return, but he's away doing work, so duty calls, as the saying goes. Now, for those of you that are new to this little format, because it's been a while, we do a quick Champions League and Europa League rundown after the midweek games when the games have been played. So we like to have a little quick run through of the results, have a little bit of a natter about what we think of the ties, where they stand, any notable goals, any incidents, and give you just a little flavour of our thoughts. So you will hopefully get this on a Friday, but we're recording immediately after the Europa League games have finished, and indeed the Champions League. Obviously we'll be back next week, but we're going to cover the games that have been played this week before we return to wrap up next week's action. So Drew, let's start with the Champions League games that were played on the Tuesday and the Wednesday. We'll start on the Tuesday games. Benfica and Zenit. Now this was ended sort of late on, all the action came. It was quite a closely fought encounter. Benfica looking to get the home advantage and were fairly dominant overall, but a very late and cynical foul from Domenico Crescito resulted in him picking up his second bookable offence. In came the cross, and like a young Danny Welbeck, up stepped Jonas to head home the winner for Benfica on the night, and they go into the second leg with a 1-0 victory. Where do you think this tie stands? Because obviously Zenit are going to have the advantage of the conditions and all that goes with that. Benfica, rich history, maybe not at their peak. Where do you see this tie going?
I think it's a little bit difficult to say. Zenit without Crescito that's a big loss, honestly, for the second leg, especially despite the fact that they're going to be at home. No one wants to go to Russia ever, let alone during the winter. But I think missing one of your starting back four against a side like Benfica, who they dominated well, but they didn't put their chances away. But they do have the players. If they tuck their chances away, they could actually go away from Portugal and get at least a goal. So. For me, I think Zenit need to find the performance that they are capable of doing at home. A lot of the times we've seen from them this season where they do score in front of their home support. So I think, for me, honestly, if I had to guess, I would probably say, I would say a draw. I think Benfica have enough, and especially without Crescito, Zenit might be a little bit on a back foot because of it. So it'll be interesting to see, though.
Would it be fair to say that the first goal, if there is to be a first goal in Russia, is going to be vital? Like whoever gets that goal, I mean, you'd think if Benfica get it with an away goal, you would back them to defend that lead, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, 100%. If they score the first goal, I think the tie is over. But we've seen Andres Villas-Boas before in the Premier League, and something tells me that he might actually tell his players to go out and try to get that early goal to avoid that. I think the worst case scenario is Benfica going 1-0 up. I don't see Zenit scoring 3 if that happens. I think Benfica have enough about them, especially in the back. They can defend deep and see out a result, I think. So I think if Zenit don't score first, I think it's over.
Yeah, I agree. And of course they will be missing Crescito. I think I'm right in saying Javi Garcia, who got booked, is going to miss the second leg, as are Jardel and Pizzi. I think I'm right in saying. Certainly some suspensions upcoming.
Yeah,
so
those are big losses, especially going in. So Garcia, Crescito, Andre Almeida, and Jardel are all ruled out for the second leg.
Those
are huge losses.
Absolutely, yeah, and especially for Zenit, who'll be looking to get back to full strength. So interesting that one. We should say the second leg of that will be played, as will the next game we're going to discuss, on March the 9th. Let's move on then to probably the glamour tie of the night. I think it's fair to say PSG 2, Chelsea 1. Now, I've put my neck on the line. I've said that PSG can win the Champions League. I believe that they have as much chance as anyone. What did you make of this game overall? A Zlatan Ibrahimovic goal for PSG, equalised by John Obi Mikel, more on him in a minute, and then Edinson Cavani off the bench to get the winner. Do you think this tie is closer than some people think, or do you give PSG the edge?
I think it's closer. I think, we may not necessarily rate Chelsea ever, or specifically this season, but they still have the players capable of putting in a performance on a European night. They do have, I may not like him, but, they do have Diego Costa, who does have some sort of scoring pedigree, and he's in form right now. Eden Hazard, Cesc Fabregas, Willian is their top player this season, and he's been performing well. I think they can do it. I don't know if they will. PSG was. I mean, they dominated proceedings, and honestly, I think Chelsea. The scoreline does flatter Chelsea just a little bit, but we've seen them before in multiple seasons in Champions League. Well, they'll keep the tie close away from home in the first leg, then they'll go to the bridge, and then they'll get the result they needed, and so a lot of times by multiple goals. So. But that was not under Jules Hiddink, so I think a lot of it comes into play. We're not quite sure what Hiddink's going to go tactically, and PSG are capable of defending well and hitting them on a break very, very quickly through someone like Angel Di Maria. So it's what Jules Hiddink will want to do tactically, I think, will define the entire match. If he's going to play open, I think there's going to be goals, and I think PSG can outshoot Chelsea, if you will. But honestly, if Chelsea sit back and defend and maybe try to hit them on the break somehow through someone like Willian or Eden Hazard, I think they might even be able to nick a 1-0 at home. But it's a different Chelsea side under different Chelsea managers, so I don't know what to expect from them, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if Mourinho was in charge, you would see very much a bus parking for 70 minutes scenario to try and nick one late on and go through. But I don't think this Chelsea side are capable of sitting back and defending against the side of PSG's power, particularly away from home. And once again, as with the previous tie, I think the away goals could be so crucial in this. And John Obi Mikel popping up, I was victim of being heavily trolled on this one because I tweeted out my let's say my lack of admiration for the player, and wouldn't you know it, a minute later he popped up and scored. So thanks for that, John Obi. We appreciate that. But what did you make of the Chelsea fans' response to Eden Hazard? Now, he came out obviously in the La Parisienne, the French press, before the game, saying that he wouldn't rule out a move to PSG, that he wants to be in a side that can win the Champions League. This is quite the fall from grace from a player that was dubbed the third best player in the world last season.
I think that's sort of. I think that's in reaction to how the season's going. Honestly, I think if Mourinho was still there, if they were still in the title chase, and if they realistically had a chance at Champions League, I don't think he'd be saying those words. I think it's a little bit reactionary on his part. I feel like if he. And you have to question his motives for, maybe did he ever see Chelsea as his long-term, maybe sort of home in the first place? I think if all of a sudden in one bad season, if arguably your best player is already wanting to potentially head for the exit, then you have to question the player as well. And I think a lot of people have. I think when he was at Lille, the way he managed what you wanted to go, I think some people sometimes question that, but you would know more than that. But it also might shed some light on why someone like Arsene Wenger didn't move for him. Maybe he saw something in his personality that he didn't want in the dressing room, and I think maybe that sort of can shed a little bit of light on it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where his future lies, because I don't think it lies at the bridge.
I agree.
And speaking of players whose future lie elsewhere, the Edinson Cavani coming off the bench to get the winner, in fairness, a good finish, which is unlike him. Actually takes him 4 usually to put one away, but a very tidy finish. Do you foresee a position where he could start at the bridge, or do you think it'll be much the same for PSG?
I think it'd be much the same. I think, honestly, what Laurent Blanc will want to do is he'll want options, especially if Chelsea go out and get a goal. And then for the first leg, he had Javier Pastore, Adrian Rabiot, he had Cavani all on the bench, and I think when you can bring those type of players on like he did in the last match, I think that's where he's going to want that depth. And honestly, Chelsea can only really call on Loic Remy if they want to get a goal, maybe even Oscar, but he's not been playing well this season. Loic Remy, as we know, has been a shadow of himself from when we've seen him in previous seasons elsewhere. So I think PSG definitely have, when you're looking at the later moments of a match, they definitely have more goal scoring options off the bench, and I think that'll play into their hands. So it's going to be tough for Chelsea in the long run, I think, especially if they don't get the first goal early. So.
Yeah, absolutely, yep. And again, as you say, March the 9th for the return leg. I think that one might be worth watching. We shall see. Let's move on to the Wednesday games then, and a club that you'll know a little bit about, that's Wolfsburg. They went away to the minnows, if you will, of the Champions League this season, Ghent, the Belgian side. This, for me, perfectly summed up Wolfsburg. I think it's fair to say that they've had a pretty mixed season in the Bundesliga, as you've highlighted on the main pod, very up and down. But it seems like Dieter Hecking has almost sort of taken the reins off a bit in this game and said, look, let's go for it. Let's try and get some goals. He's pretty much said to Julian Draxler to don't worry about the defensive side, just go and do what you do. And he got 2 goals, and all seemed to be delightful. Max Kruse popping up with a 3rd goal. And then, wouldn't you know it, they chuck away 2 late goals and were, to be honest, I thought quite fortunate not to give away a penalty in the last minute. What do you make of Wolfsburg, and do you think that they'll be comfortable in the second leg, or are you worried about which side will turn up?
See, I think that sums them up. Honestly, I mean, this is a kind of a microcosm of it. They were brilliant up until the point where they let the first goal in, and then they mentally shut down and let that second late one in the 89th minute. I think that sums up their entire season domestically. Sometimes they're fantastic, but more so recently, they've not been very good. But I like the fact that you highlighted that Dieter Hecking sort of took the shackles off Draxler and said, just worry about the final third, because that's the type of player Draxler is. I think if you ask him to do more than just sort of conduct proceedings going forward, he tapers off a little bit. Everyone's seen how brilliant he was at Schalke, and he didn't have any defensive responsibilities there. But he does more so now at Wolfsburg. I think that's sort of made his play drop a little bit. But honestly, you have to say that I think Ghent put in a decent account of themselves. It's their first ever appearance in the round of 16. They actually outpossessed Wolfsburg. They had more shots on target. And the total amount of chances they created were only slightly fewer. They had double the corners. So they weren't afraid to go for it. And I think they won't be afraid to go for it when they travel away from home. But over the last couple of seasons, Wolfsburg are very, very, very good at the Volkswagen Arena. So I don't know if Ghent will come and get the result. Certainly I don't know if they'll outscore Wolfsburg. So honestly, I don't see them going and pulling in a 2-goal performance without letting one in. I think Wolfsburg have the tie, but they didn't make their job any easier by letting those 2 late ones. So for me, I think it's a performance to build upon. They'll be happy they got the result. So if they can take this result into the weekend domestic fixture and get a result there and build on that moving forward, I think they'll be okay. So.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly summed up. And like you, I think Ghent have. I can see Ghent scoring, but I can't see them getting the 2 goals at least that they need, and I certainly can't see them keeping Wolfsburg to only scoring once. So I'm with you. I actually put my head on the block here. I think Wolfsburg will win by 2 or 3 clear goals in the second leg, but we shall see. You just never know. And the final game that we saw yesterday was quite a heavyweight clash in Rome between Roma and Real Madrid. This was overshadowed in the build-up to this game about Cristiano Ronaldo, his comments in the press about whether he likes certain players, whether he doesn't, comments about Barcelona players, etc. But he did his talking on the pitch. Yep. A heavily deflected goal, it has to be said. But his strike and Hesse's late strike, this to me, Roma, a lot of possession, a lot of Mohamed Salah, but no punch, was there?
No, there really wasn't. I mean, they only tested Navas once all match. So despite they had a fair amount of the possession, they did create some of the chances. But honestly, I think far and away, I think the tie is over. Tom summed it up in the group chat yesterday. I think he said, once he got that late second, I think is the absolute key. I think if Roma go home to a 1-0, I think they have a shot. But 2-0, I don't see them pegging Real for more than 2, and I don't see them shutting them out either. In regards to Ronaldo, I might necessarily like him. I respect his ability. I do think sometimes that his personality rubs a lot of people the wrong way. But like you said, more often than not, he does do his talking on the pitch, and for that, you have to give him a huge amount of credit. I think Real Madrid are going to be a favorite moving forward, despite Zinedine Zidane coming in. I still think he's kept the team the way he needed to. That they're playing a little bit better. They're getting results domestically as well, so I think I don't see Roma getting anything from this in the second leg. I think Real Madrid will be comfortable. They might leak a goal, but they won't leak more than that, and that's all that was required.
Fair enough. Let me take you back to the 10th of March 2015,
Sure.
And a fairly sort of moderately out of form Schalke side went to the Bernabeu and scored 4 times. And granted, they conceded 3 and ultimately went out, but what makes you think Roma, against a side like Real Madrid, who I think it's fair to say did look quite wobbly at the back yesterday, if not under particular threat? Do you think if Roma can go there and maybe get an early goal and sit on it, that do you just worry that they'll get outscored rather than not be able to score themselves?
No, I think they'll get outscored. I mean, Real Madrid, they did get the shutout in this match, but I don't think that they don't leak that they are capable of giving up goals, basically. So I think Roma they'll have to go for it, and I think that might play into their hands a little bit, but I don't really see them again out shooting Real Madrid, because historically that's been their MO. Real Madrid, they've always not been, they've always allowed more goals than say your Barcelona or your Atletico, but that's never been their concern, because they know that they'll just score more goals than you, and honestly that's all they need to do. I don't see them losing at home, and I just can't see Roma pulling out the result, even if they score goals.
No, I'm with you. I fancy goals, but a lot of them in the Roma net, sadly. And Real Madrid defending like they do, I can't see them winning this Champions League.
Yes.
Can you?
No, I can't. I mean, I don't necessarily think PSG will win the Champions League, but I would give them a better percentage chance than Real Madrid, because I think they're more able to dig deep when necessary. Again, Real Madrid, more often than not, are more worried about how many goals they can score rather than how many they can prevent. And I think that's their downfall domestically. I think it'll be their downfall in Europe again. So I think you have to put someone like Bayern Munich, Barca, maybe even PSG ahead of them, and I think they'll go deep as usual. They usually make the quarterfinals, probably the semis, but I don't see them winning it either.
No, I would also put Juventus ahead of them
Sure,
right now, personally. But I think it's a tough one. And don't forget, of course, in the group stages, PSG were extremely unlucky not to beat Real over the 2 games in that group stage as well. So it'd be interesting to see if they may meet down the road. That ties up this week's Champions League. As I said, next week we do have Arsenal-Barcelona. We have Juventus-Bayern Munich, 2 mouth-watering ties on the same night. And then 2 maybe less mouth-watering ties between PSV, Atletico Madrid, and Dynamo Kiev and Manchester City. We will have a Satchel again next week to run through those. So I'm not going to predict any of those games, but do tune in next week and we will dissect whatever happens. Let's move on then to the Europa League. Plenty to get through in this section.
Always.
Indeed, yes. So we've caught up on as much as we could do in the time allotted. I want to start in Florence. Fiorentina 1, Tottenham Hotspur 1. Now, this was a game that obviously a lot of domestic Premier League fans are looking at this sort of tie and thinking, will Tottenham burn out? They made quite a few changes. The likes of Chadley, Carroll, Davies, Mason and the goalkeeper Vaughan were all brought into the side. They got a 1-1 draw. I'll touch on the equaliser in a minute, which was spectacular. But looking at this tie as a whole now, do you think this is very evenly matched going into the second leg in London?
I think it is, but I mean, Spurs this season, everyone has applauded how strong they've been at the back. The partnership between Alderweireld and Vertonghen has been incredibly solid. I know Vertonghen didn't actually play, but I think that's where they've built a lot of the success in the Premier League this season. I would say that Fiorentina have a lot going for them in regards to moving forward. In the final third, Bernardeschi, Blaszczykowski, Ilicic, all those type of players can threaten Spurs in multiple areas. So I don't know if Spurs can go home and feel comfortable on a 1-1. I know they have that away goal, but I don't see them keeping a clean sheet against Fiorentina, even with a full 11. I think Fiorentina do have goals in them in the second leg, so I don't know. They might actually get knocked out, but it was a good performance from Fiorentina. Fair credit to Spurs for going away from home and still putting in a decent showing, enough to get that away goal and get the 1-1 draw. But I don't think they can go home and feel comfortably in control by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I agree, and they are well set up, Fiorentina, as John will testify, to go away from home and potentially hit on the counter-attack. Yep. And if you watch them against Inter the other night, that will, sadly, that will show you exactly what we're on about there. But we should touch on the goal that levelled up the game, a hipster's choice, no less. Federico Bernardeschi absolutely spanked it in. It's well worth looking up if you haven't seen this goal. It sort of falls to him on the edge of the box. There is a deflection off of Ryan Mason, it has to be said, but absolutely cracking strike from 30 yards in off the underside of the bar. They always look good, and it's nice to see our hipsters' choices are doing us proud. Unlike Serge Aurier, of course. Less said, the better. Perfectly poised. Let's move on to a team close to your heart, Borussia Dortmund, facing Porto, who are, I think it's fair to say, in transition, sort of a new coach and trying to adjust to the new ways. Goals from Piszczek and Marco Reus, a comfortable 2-0 victory for Tuchel's men. Do you think Dortmund have got what it takes to go all the way in this competition?
I think they do. The only question for me, the deeper they go, goalkeeping might be an issue. They're going to come up against sides that historically do very, very well in cup competitions, like namely Sevilla, for example. I think Berkey, he's been a real question mark this season. The back's been okay, but Hummels hasn't been at his best this year either. But going forward, we've been so strong. Aubameyang has been on form, one of the strikers in world football. Mkhitaryan's been one of the best players in the world, no matter what position you consider. Marco Reus is still he's getting more consistent now, which is what I'd like to see. And in the midfield, Julian Weigl and the like, they've done very, very well. But for me, Dortmund still are susceptible to being countered. Under Tuchel now, they play more possession-based football than counterattack that you saw under Jurgen Klopp. So now it's more like, as we as Arsenal fans know, the more we possess, that one or two mistakes we might make, all of a sudden it's a 3-on-1 break, counterattack that we might struggle to defend against. And that's what Dortmund's question mark is going to be. And there's a lot of sides that they might come up against that can employ that very, very well. You just mentioned Fiorentina before as a prime example. Sevilla can do it. They've been so good in Europa League in recent seasons. So I think they can. But the back four and the goalkeeping is going to be the weakness. If they don't do it, that's what's going to be the problem.
Yeah, interesting. They put out quite a strong side, has to be said, tonight. The likes of Piszczek obviously playing Papadopoulos, Nuri Sahin, who is still alive, contrary to popular belief. Kelly's favourite, Julian Weigl, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang returning from injury, and Henrik Mkhitaryan and Marco Reus all playing. So it's quite a strong side, quite a strong side. Interesting. We shall see how Borussia Dortmund get on. Let's touch on Midtjylland Manchester United now.
Shall we?
I mean, yeah, where do we begin? We had a question, a statement, probably better, from our good friend Jansim Shaheen, and he simply says, Man United, ha 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 ha, or ha 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 ha. I think it's fair to say that Jansim is not a United fan. I mean, we've covered United on the Breakfast Pod, on the podcast main. We've discussed them, as fans of a rival club, in our personal time. I mean, what do we make of this result? Manchester United, there is a Champions League place on offer for this competition. They've sent out a side tonight that had the likes of Love, McNair, Carrick. I mean, that front line is not bad, though, when you look at Martial, Mata, Lingard and Depay. Depay getting the goal. And what would worry me more as a United fan is they've gone away from home, they've gone in front to silence a crowd, you'd think, and then they've conceded 2 goals and lost from a winning position, and they lost David De Gea in the warm-up, which could be a massive blow. I mean, what do you make of this result, and what do you make of United right now?
Oddly enough, I think it's a typical Midtjylland result. You and I spoke pre-pod that they're one of those sides that somehow they always pop up and put in a good performance against supposedly stronger opposition. I wouldn't know if I'd say I'm surprised that they won, but I'm not surprised that they played well. They're very, very stubborn. They're well drilled. They have a few key players who always perform. Pione Sisto is an excellent player, and I'm actually, like I said to you before, Prepod, I'm surprised he's still playing in the Danish league. I think he could make a step up to a better league. He's very, very good. As regards to United, it's typical United from this season. They actually, if you look at the numbers, I know numbers don't mean everything, but this is a shout out to Jeff. The numbers did speak of that they controlled proceedings. They still didn't get it. I think, and this is why the fans are upset with how they've been playing this season. It's not typical United football. United under Ferguson, once they got that first goal, they'd go for the second immediately because they would know away on a European night, if you let the home side get back in it even remotely, they're gonna get a goal back. So I think that's what the bigger issue is. But like you said, if you're starting the likes of Martial, Juan Mata, Memphis Depay, and Herrera, you should have enough about you to get that second goal before you let them back in it. So I think United fans will be woefully disappointed. It's not over yet. They did get the away goal. They could go to Old Trafford and get a 2-1, 3-0 result. You never really know. But to go home in losing position after this, no one would have wanted to see.
No, we will hopefully get Ross's thoughts actually before the return leg. Ross, obviously a Southampton fan, they played Southampton. It'd be interesting to get his take on what he makes of Michelin, particularly away from home. But just on United as well, I mean, I touched on it there. David De Gea. There's no news at the moment as to what. I will just double check that on Twitter as we speak. But there's no news at the moment on what the injury is or whether it's serious. But they've lost Wayne Rooney in the last week. Now, some would say blessing in disguise, maybe. But losing De Gea, I mean, the injuries are piling up. This conceivably could end their season right here, if this injury
Absolutely,
is serious.
because Sergio Romero is for me not even close to good enough to anchor United's back four from the goalkeeper position. There's a reason why that's Argentina's biggest weakness has always been goalkeeper, because he's not really performed very well. And he's relied on teams ahead of him controlling possession, so he doesn't have to see a lot of shot totals. So I think if De Gea's out for any reasonable amount of time, a month or longer, I think United are in a world of trouble. So.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And there is no news. I just had a quick look, and I just looked at an astonishing stat that Manchester United currently have. If you exclude the youth players that they're using, they currently have 12 fit first-team players. I mean, that is stats, isn't it? Absolutely incredible. Anyway, we'll leave that game behind then and move on to another game that I know you saw the highlights of. Sevilla, who have won the competition in the last 2 years, and 2 goals from Llorente and Lorient legend Kevin Gamero, God bless his socks. 3-0 victory over Molde. It sounds straightforward. What do you make of Sevilla? They've not been great in La Liga. Tom's touched on them this season, but do you think they've got what it takes to go and win this competition yet
Honestly,
again?
I mean, I know they've not been good in La Liga this term, but I would still put them as one of the heavy favorites to win. They're such a cup competition team. They're always so strong at home, which is important, but they're very capable away from home in the Europa League. We've seen that in the past 2 seasons. They can go and get results in the most hostile of environments. I think the team's just built for it. They work hard. So Unai Emery has been playing a style of football where they're not afraid to put in a shift physically as well. They put their nose to the ground and do what it takes. And I think that's why I would be shocked if they don't make at least the semifinals again. And in Fernando Llorente, they have a player who, if you give him any sort of space in the box, he'll convert a chance for you, and I think that's key. I know Kevin Gamero has been doing a little bit better this year, but I think Llorente puts him it makes him even a little bit better and more dangerous as well. And then you have the likes of Konoplyanka, who he didn't start this match. But he's been having a very, very good season as well. So that they do have the players to, I think, push on and get as deep as everyone would expect them to, despite not doing well domestically.
Yeah, I agree. And the one thing I always seem to notice with Sevilla, that atmosphere at the Juan Sanchez Pizjuan, I believe it's pronounced, that atmosphere, when that place gets rocking, it properly gets rocking. And I've seen games where, in fact, just this past weekend, where Sevilla were toiling a little bit against Las Palmas, and then all of a sudden, bang bang, 2 goals, game was over, and that atmosphere was a big say in that. So I agree. I think they're definitely dark horses, if indeed they are dark horses. We shall see. Speaking of dark horses and teams that could potentially win this competition, brings us to a tie between Villarreal and Napoli. Now, Napoli, for me, are the team to watch and could potentially win this competition, but they came unstuck to a superb Denis Suarez free kick with 8 minutes to play. Where do you think this leaves the tie? Do you think Napoli will come out all guns blazing, strong squad, and blow Villarreal away at the San Paolo?
I think they will. If you look at it, Higuain and Insigne both didn't play. Allen came off the bench as well. Maggio didn't see time at all. Albiol didn't play. Al Khadori didn't play either. So honestly, I feel like at home those players are going to start at least. Napoli, I do believe, they're one of the teams with the most goals scored this competition this year so far. So for me, I would think that full credit to Villarreal for putting in the performance at home, and historically they're quite good at home. But Napoli, the way they've been in form in Serie A and the goals they do have through the likes of Higuain and Insigne, I think that I would expect Napoli to at least put 3 past them in the return leg for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And again, it'll be interesting to get John's take on that before the return leg, so we will indeed do that. St Etienne, let's move on to them. One of the grand old names of European football, one of France's most successful team, in fact, in history. They're scoring goals, and I say that with a surprise as much as anything. And as a keen follower of French football, I am surprised. But Bayassal's second goal in a week, Kevin Monet-Paquet, another Lorient legend, and Jean-Christophe Barbec on loan, getting the result. They were 2-0 up, pulled back to 2-2, but they came out with the result. Now, I think this is a massive result for St Etienne. Basel. You would know a bit about Basel. They're a tough nut to crack.
They are a tough nut to crack, but not to sort of I guess promote any things Arsenal. But if you look at it, they were way more open without Mohamed El Neni. Now that he's moved on to Arsenal, I think that's worth noting. I know you can speak more about St Etienne than I can because you watch way more Ligue 1 than I do. But I think the fact that they converted any chance they had on target. I think that's just good finishing on their part on the whole in the match. But Basel can go home. They scored, 2 away, so I could see them going home and putting in a much better performance, more solidified at the back. I could see them nicking a close result at home and actually moving on. And as you say, Saint Etienne don't know you score a lot of goals, probably especially away from home. So I don't think Basel's panicking just yet. Those 2 away goals are absolutely crucial. So it's not over yet. So I'd be surprised if they don't go through.
Yeah, those away goals could be crucial because, as you say, St Etienne are notoriously not great travellers. The one thing they are, though, is quite good at just sitting on a performance, on a lead, if you will. And I wonder if they might just get lots of people behind the ball and try to get a goal on the counter attack. But no, I think you're absolutely right. It's very much in the balance, that one, and it'll be interesting to see how Gautier's men do in the return leg. Let's touch on Augsburg and Liverpool, again another team that you've seen plenty of this season. I'll ask you a straightforward question on this one. It finishes 0-0. Who does this result favour more and why?
I think it's tough. Honestly, I think for their first appearance in the knockout stage, I think Augsburg performed very, very well against a storied European team. Liverpool did dominate, but Marvin Hitz played very, very well in goal, as he has all season for them. Honestly, though, I think Liverpool fans should be very, very disappointed. You'd expect them to at least score a goal. Augsburg have been struggling in the Bundesliga, but they've been in excellent form in recent weeks since Runde kicked back up again. I think the result will favor them because there's no pressure for them. They're going to get to go to Anfield, which is one of the most historic grounds in European football. They're going to enjoy the experience. They don't have any expectations of going deep in the tournament, so they have nothing to lose. Marcus Rangel is not the most adventurous manager in regards to his tactics, but Augsburg can defend very, very well when they can, and they're set up to counterattack. Tobias Werner, Raul Bobadilla, Alexander Esfine, those types of players. They do have pace in wider areas, and they can hit Liverpool on the break if they get the chance to. So, Liverpool fans will want a much better performance. So the pressure's all on Liverpool, I think, at this point. When Dietmar Hamann came out in the post-match and was talking about how they were very, very average. Most of the fans are very disappointed. Jordan Henderson and James Milner particularly didn't really play very well. So Augsburg would be more than happy to see a point. They'll get to go away from home. They'll get to enjoy the away experience. And I wouldn't be shocked if they get a goal. I don't know if they'll win, but I think they're going to be playing free football in regards to the fact that there's no expectations for them. So I think they'll enjoy it, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I agree with you. And for me, this game has got banana skin written all over it. Just has a whiff of Augsburg keep it tight for an hour, 70 minutes, and then get that goal and defend for their lives. But interesting how strong a side Liverpool had out today as well. That surprised me, I'm not going to lie. That's quite a strong side they had out. So interesting.
Well, I don't know if it's a shock. Jurgen Klopp is, he did the same thing at Dortmund. He played strong sides in Europe. But the thing for me, though, I feel like a lot of English clubs go on an away day in Europe and do make some substitutions because of how difficult the domestic fixture list is. In Germany, a lot of the teams still play their full-strength sides in Europe despite the weekend fixtures because usually they get more rest. German sides coming into February would have had that winter break, which English clubs don't get. So I don't know if he made the right choice starting his full-strength 11. It'll be interesting to see how that goes, but I'm not surprised he did it.
Yeah, particularly with that big curling cup, Capital One Cup final, on the horizon for Liverpool. But speaking of sides that have had a winter break, brings me nicely to Valencia, and indeed, more importantly, Rapid Wien. Now, Tom has brought us up to speed with all things Austrian many times. I think it's fair to say that Rapid Wien got a walloping. They were beaten by tactical genius Gary Neville 6-0. Straightforward question for you. I mean, is this a sign that Gary Neville was right all along and that they just weren't taking their chances? Or is it a little bit of Austrian team not yet up to speed, poor away from home, got walloped?
I just think that they just got walloped. There's such a gap in class between the Austrian Bundesliga and La Liga, especially Rapid Wien and Valencia. If you look at the 11s alongside each other, Rapid Wien does have some good younger Austrian players. And most people won't know, but Thomas Murg is one of them. But he didn't even start. Actually, he came on at halftime. But I feel there's just I can't even put it to words. For me, they haven't played. Their season kicked off again. 2 weeks ago, was it? So. They're not in any sort of amount of form. You go to a place like the Mestalla Stadium, which Valencia do play well at usually, and they have such a good, so many good players going forward. I feel like it's just a gap in difference in quality for me. I don't think this is any sort of turning point for them necessarily. I think they're still going to struggle domestically, but I think they do have maybe an outside chance of making a run at the Europa League. But make no mistake about it, though. Rapid Wien, they may have lost 6-0, but they still created chances. So despite that, possession was even. They created almost as many, one fewer attempt on goal than Valencia did, despite the goal scoring. So it's not like, maybe a better team in Rapid Wien's shoes wouldn't have lost 6-0. They may have actually scored some goals. So for me, that's why it signifies just that difference in class. Also, shout out to Santi Mina. He had 2 goals and 3 assists in this performance, by the way. He's absolutely brilliant. So...
Yeah, he's a real talent, definitely a real talent, and future Hipsters' choice, I can exclusively reveal. I've been drawing up a long list, and trust me, it is long. And at the risk of stealing Tom's thunder, I'm sure Tom will touch on this on Monday's pod, but all of that aside, and I agree with every word you said, and granted, I'm with you, I don't think this is necessarily a turning point for Valencia, but this can't do them any harm as they go back into La Liga, can it? I mean, just a result like this, surely this will lift the confidence and the spirit of the players.
Well, no, it's not going to do them any harm. When you thump someone 6-0, you're going to think you can go out the next match and win again 6-0. But I just don't. They have Granada their next domestic match. So honestly, if you want to sort of get back on track, Granada's a good team to try to do it against. But long term, I don't think they have enough about them to really sort of charge up the table and really fight for 5th or 6th. If they're not, how many points are they back? I think they're 8 points back of Eibar, 12 points back of Sevilla, and those are 5th and 6th respectively. So I don't know if they have enough. They have to work on their consistency first and foremost. But, they are capable of scoring goals. They certainly haven't scored enough goals this season, given the strength of the players they have on offer. But I think they can use it as a springboard, but I don't know if it'll be enough of a springboard.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one with Valencia. You just never know what you're going to get, do you? But I'm sure Tom will let us know how they get on against Granada on Monday. Let's move on then. Oh, this is an old-fashioned tie if ever I saw one. Galatasaray and Lazio, the Turkish bear pit. A goal from Sarrioglu, there we go, got there in the end, for Galatasaray in the 12th minute, equalised by Milinkovic-Savic, one of John's favourites. Is this a tie that Galatasaray will be thinking, we really needed to get more out of this if we're going to go to the Olimpico and get something out of the second leg?
I'm not really sure, honestly. Lazio's been... I guess it's a huge question mark on Lazio this season. They've domestically, they're what are they, 6th or 7th at this point? I think I can't recall. But they score as much as they concede. But yeah,
7th.
So I think that plays into Galatasaray's favor. I do think they would have liked to win. Rarely do people go to Istanbul and actually get a result off of Galatasaray. So they might be disappointed in the performance, but I don't think they should be disappointed in their chances of going to Rome and getting a result. I don't necessarily know how many goals they're going to put past Lazio, but I could actually see another 1-1 in this going to extra time, maybe even penalties, because again, Lazio don't score enough for me to think that they can go and maybe put 2 or 3 past Galatasaray, who can defend well, and they do have players with quality who can kill you at a moment's notice. Lucas Podolski, say what you want, but he does. If you give him a chance, he'll put it away. Wesley Schneider, players like that. So. For me, it's completely up in the air. It was even throughout this match. I think it'll be even throughout the next one. I think it's going to go to extra time.
Yeah, definitely a close one. 2 fairly evenly matched sides, probably not at their peak, I think it's fair to say right now. And breaking news, David De Gea, just quick update for you. He will have a scan on a knee injury tomorrow, and the club officials don't believe it to be too serious. So hopefully some good news for Man United fans at least. We shall see. But Louis van Gaal still getting plenty of stick, as you would expect. Let's wrap up with a couple more games then. Briefly, Shakhtar and Schalke 0-0. Good result for Schalke, given away from home. Kucha sent off late for Shakhtar, but Schalke with a clean sheet. You'd expect them to go into that second leg favourites,
absolutely. I think that's actually a really good result for Schalke, and they're trying to make some waves domestically and really sort of fight for that third and fourth place spot. And I think this will help them. Shakhtar always tough in Europe. Other bigger clubs have found that out in recent seasons in Champions League. They do have some decent pedigree. They have a lot of very good players. They play a very good team game. Schalke put in a good performance, I think. It's about even, I would say, on the strength of it through 90 minutes. But going home to Gelsenkirchen, I would put them as maybe slight favorites. But they do have the quality to get some goals. And Klaas Huntelaar didn't even play this match. He only got 2 minutes on the pitch. So you'd have to think in the second leg he's going to be leading the line, and that's going to be a massive worry for Shakhtar to handle. I think Schalke will progress through this for sure.
And speaking of favourites from Germany, Bayer Leverkusen go away from home to Sporting Lisbon or Sporting Club de Portugal, whichever you prefer. I'm surprised at this, if I'm honest. Really, I'm surprised. But they came away with a 1-0 victory. Kalim Bellarabi getting the winning goal in 26 minutes. Ruben Semedo sent off for Sporting late on as well. This surprised me. Did it surprise you with Leverkusen's away?
I think it's the bigger surprise wasn't that they necessarily won. I think it's how dominant they were in regards to how many chances they created and how many chances they didn't give up. I think total Sporting only created 2 chances all match long. Leverkusen were hitting on the counterattack all evening, which I would expect from them going away from home. I think they might be upset with only getting a goal, considering how many chances they did create. But I think they'll be thinking that they definitely have every chance of going back for the second leg in front of their home support. I would put them as favorites to go through. But you never know. Sporting do have quality to turn up. They didn't turn up, in this performance, but I think they could turn up, maybe make it a little more difficult in the second leg. But I still think that Leverkusen will go through.
Yeah, I'm with you. I do think Sporting will get a goal. It's whether they can keep Leverkusen out. I'm not so confident about that fact. Final game I want to touch on is probably one from more my neck of the woods, but Olympique de Marseille, another classic French name of European football. Another classic Marseille performance. They lost at home to Athletic Club Bilbao. Absolute stunner from Adariz with the winner. I'm sure Tom will touch on this on Monday, but if you haven't seen it, do look it up. Ran about 30 yards out on the half volley, lets it drop, volleys it straight over the top of over Mandanda, who had absolutely no chance. Stunning goal for the winner. What I want to ask you is, Marseille, they've lost at home. They're obviously out of contention for the French league title, as are everyone. But now they're struggling to even get anywhere near European spots in Liga. What do you make of Marseille? They're a bit of a mess right now. Do you think? Do you give them any chance of turning this around the second leg?
I think they're in a huge bit of a mess. I think you've said it multiple times on the pod that when Michy Batshuayi doesn't score, they don't score. He didn't start this match. So I think maybe that could sum up the reason why they didn't even get a result. But I can't see them going till Bao and getting a result either. I think Athletic, they've struggled a little bit domestically, but San Sebastian's a very hard place to go and get a result. So I don't see it happening. As for Marseille, what do I think of them? I think they just made so many wrong decisions in regard to, I think, player personnel. I don't know why they went and got someone like a Stephen Fletcher, for example. They didn't start Michy Batshuayi this match. They took a punt on Florian Thauvin, who didn't do anything for Newcastle after he left. He didn't want to come back to Marseille, but they brought him anyway. So it seems like they're just struggling to solve the issues, but they're not solving them the way you would think a club of their stature would try. So I'm not quite sure, but they're in all sorts of disarray, and it's not looking good for them. And it's a club that I used to actually enjoy watching on Champions League nights when Arsenal used to get them all the time. They used to be so much more tricky. They used to have so much ability, but they're just not the same anymore, which is kind of a shame, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. And sadly, the Scottish Jean-Pierre Gignac did not come up with the goods tonight, unfortunately. Yes, the Big Mac is missed. He of course playing his trade in Tigres in Mexico now, which is just the most bizarre. I still look at it now and think that's the most bizarre signing ever. But by all accounts, he's doing very, very well over in Mexico.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. I should correct myself. Sorry, Andre Pierre Gignac, get his name right, of course. Okay, well that kind of rounds us off with the games I wanted to focus on. I have left out a couple, which I'll just bring the listeners up to date with. Anderlecht 1-0 winners over Olympiacos. Budgie with a goal in 67 minutes. Elsewhere, Sparta Prague, whichever you prefer, 1-0 winners over Kuban Krasnodar. Julis with the winner on 64 minutes. FC Sion losing at home to Braga by 2-1. Stolikovic and Rafa Silva with the goals for Braga, and Konate with the reply for Sion. Vukasevic was sent off for Braga in that game. So that's all the other results. As I say, wasn't really much else to touch on with the rest of the games, so we'll draw a line into those. The second leg for the Europa League do come up fairly swiftly. In fact, I think I'm right in saying I am just going to double check this. They are indeed, yes, the 25th. So by this time next week, we will know who the quarterfinalists are going to be. So some quite close ties there. I'm just going to ask you before we go to questions. I do this to John. I know it's very mean, but I want you to pick, as things stand right now, who you think. I won't say Champions League because it would be unfair before the other games are played. But Europa League, who do you think is going to win it? Who do you think makes the final as we speak right now?
My heart wants to say Dortmund, any of those two options, but I just don't think I see it. I think Sevilla will be in the final. And if I had to say it, I honestly think Napoli can end up doing it. I think that they're just too good when they're at full strength. They have Gonzalo Higuain on form, is arguably one of the best strikers in the world, if not the best striker in the world at the moment. So I think Sevilla Napoli is a fair guess. But outside shot, maybe for someone like a Fiorentina or a Dortmund, you never know. And
I'm going to stick with Napoli as well. My dark horse is Leverkusen. Just got a
that's a
sneaky
good one.
feeling. Yeah, sneaky feeling. Depending on the draw, of course. We shall see. Right, we'll finish with some questions then. We've just had a couple. I appreciate it was a bit late in the day, so apologies if you didn't get a chance to ask us a question, but we will be back. So ping us some questions for the pod if you will. First question I'm going to give to you from Noma Mabad. Oh, crikey.
Let's try again.
Mabandla. There we go. Noma Mabandla. Sorry, Noma. I do apologise. Is Pep's team at Bayern Munich a failure if he doesn't win the Champions League? Now, there's a question for you.
I think so. I mean, you would have to say similarly. Barca usually run the table, and Spain are very close to it. When they don't win Champions League, they see the season as only a marginal success. I think Bayern in that same boat now. I think Bayern are so dominant domestically; they are one of the top 2 or 3 club teams in world football over the last however many years. Let's just say 4 for the moment. But Pep hasn't won Champions League since 2010-2011. He's made the semifinals 3 straight seasons, so he needs to get over that hump again. I do think this Bayern team is good enough to do it. I think the way he added to the first team puts them. I think it'll get him over the hump. But I think if he doesn't win it, I think he'll be massively disappointed because this is the one thing that's missed from his dossier from his time at Bayern has been that Champions League win. So I think he will be disappointed personally. But I don't know if it's necessarily disappointment because Champions League is so difficult to win, and when you're playing teams like Barcelona or Real Madrid or maybe even PSG, it's not easy. And Bayern never come up against routine opposition of that quality. Bar Dortmund, they don't have a very difficult schedule for them because it's just a huge gap. So I don't know how they'll fare, but I think if he doesn't win it, he'll be disappointed for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm so annoyed that game with Juventus is on the same time as my beloved Arsenal because I might have to pull double duty to screen in that.
Exactly what I'll be doing. So.
Yeah, that's too good a game to miss, isn't it? Absolutely. I can hear Arsenal fans throwing stuff at the radio now, going, "No, how dare you!" But what can I say? We're hipsters. We got to watch 2 games at once. I should give a nod to our good friend Pigman J Hankenstein at Pigmundia, who did ask a question about Valencia, which we kind of touched on already. He just said, "Does Valencia's performance have any predictive value for the future La Liga performance, or is it simply a fluke?" We have touched on it. I think both Drew and myself are both in the camp of not necessarily a fluke, but maybe not read into too much of it until they go to Granada on Saturday and see where they go from there. One result does not make a season, as they say. And the final question we had today was from a good pal of mine from another podcast. It's at Lord Hillwood, Steve. He says, "What do you make of Marseille? Fletcher missing chances, awful game too." So obviously, Drew, you've had your say on Marseille. I just want to have my two pence worth. I think this is a crying shame. I really do. I've listened to a lot of podcasts in the last week alone that have been lambasting French football. Obviously, the talk of PSG has been in the media spotlight this week, and whether them winning the league by a street is bad for the league. And I have to say, I'm disappointed at the amount of journalists that say that Liga is not good to watch. Is now the 5th league, in the standings. Which, you could argue that, but I just look at results like this from tonight from Marseille, and it just backs up everything these pundits are saying, and it makes French football so hard to defend in the Europa League when you see results like this. You see the performance that Etienne have put in, and then you see what Marseille do. And Steve's absolutely right. They were poor tonight. Without Michy Batshuayi, they are half the side. And they just look so disjointed. And I can't help but think that Michel was a bad appointment. And I think this is a club that they need a new backer. There's no surprise they have been up for sale for a number of years. The stadium is beautiful. The area is beautiful. The fans are passionate. But they just don't have the team. They don't have the management. And they don't have the structure to succeed at this stage. And it would be a real disappointment for me if they do bow out at this stage, because this is a sort of tournament that really they should be looking to make the last 4 or at very least the last 8 of. So massive disappointment, and it's a shame. It really is a shame to see such a big side falling by the wayside. So there we go. That's my 2 pence worth. Right, before we get out of here, Drew, tomorrow you have another Hall of Fame blog out. I'm sure people will have heard us plugging it on Monday's pod, because of course they've listened to Monday's pod. But in case they haven't, who have you got coming up tomorrow?
I'm going to go as hipster as possible, honestly, with this one. Hidetoshi Nakata, the Japanese legend, had spent time in Serie A playing with Perugia, Parma, and Roma. So yeah, look out for that.
Super. That will be up on our account, hopefully early afternoon at some point tomorrow UK time. So have a look out for that. And as usual, just keep an eye out for our content, our English breakfast pod, where we run through. This week it's an FA Cup heavy schedule because that's what's going on. We shall be running through that on Sunday. Ross will be joining me along with one of Simon or Danny. I think it's Danny this week, but I may be wrong, so don't correct me on that one. And then of course the pod will return on Monday. And if you haven't already, do check out our interview that we released today. The fantastic Mina Rizuki, who was not just 24 hours ago on the BBC, waxing lyrical and was fantastic to listen to. Well, we managed to snare her for an interview, and myself and John sat down with her for a good hour and 10 minutes. It's really, really good listening, and don't be put off if you're not a fan of Italian football. She talks about all things football. It's really is a great listen. So do hop onto YouTube or indeed iTunes and give it a listen. But that's it from us tonight. So I'd just like to say thank you very much to Drew for stepping into the breach. You did John proud. I'm sure he'd be delighted.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Of course.
No problem at all. And yes, we will indeed say those immortal words to keep your glasses trendy and indeed your beard strong. And we will speak to you on the Football Hipsters podcast on Sunday for the English breakfast and on Tuesday for the regular pod. Keep it tuned and we'll speak to you soon.
Starts down by Cafu. In towards Gerrard! Hello! Here we go! Steven Gerrard! Now Ronaldinho. Oh, it's a terrific goal! Wonderful, wonderful goal!
There's a mistake by Bernat. It's let Messi in! He makes the difference for Barcelona!
Hooked into the penalty area towards Zidane! Oh, fantastic!